My name is Sam Oakham. I'm the director of the Frank Porter Graham Child Development Institute and chair of the search for the director of the Injury Prevention Research Center. We have today a presentation for one of the candidates for that directorship. Dr. Steve Marshall is the current interim director of the Injury Prevention Research Center. He holds a PhD from the illustrious University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He has a postgraduate diploma from Lincoln University in Canterbury, New Zealand, and a Bachelor of Science from University of Canterbury in New Zealand.
The real Canterbury University.
Canterbury University. Is that right?
It is, yeah.
It's spelled differently on there.
Oh, is it?
The
typos? Whoops.
and as you can see, this will be sort of an informal talk. Dr. Marshall is now a professor in the Department of Epidemiology. He's the co-author of 10 book chapters and a ton of research articles, 187 research articles with 3 in press. He, over the years since his PhD, which was in 1998, has amassed a truly impressive record of scholarship in a range of areas. And I'm going to let Steve describe his content area during your talk. I think that I'd like to ask Steve if you would like to accept questions as the talk goes on, or would you like them to wait?
No, we'll take questions as we go.
Okay, questions as we go. So, Dr. Marshall.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone, and I appreciate the invitation to describe my research area. So we'll have you out of here in 11 hours and 55 minutes. Don't worry, I guarantee that it won't take any longer than that. If you can't hear me at any point, please kind of wave or indicate, always flag me down. And thank you all very much for coming along. It's a real honor and a privilege just to interview for this position for reasons that I'll describe. This center, I think, is a really special one, and I'm just excited to be here today. So this is a quick overview of my talk. As you can see, I carefully arranged for the slides to be behind me. But I appreciate many of you probably don't, some of you anyway, probably somewhat new to the field of injury prevention, and so I'm going to indulgently give a little overview of the field and then go into some of the more areas that you might expect of someone to give in a talk like this, talking about priorities with respect to vision and the immediate future of the center. But we're going to start off self-indulgently, of course, talking about myself, and then a little bit about the field. I thought it was helpful, and perhaps it's not, but to quickly recap the illustrious history of the center, because it really is a special center. Originally founded in '86 and then funded in '87 with a core grant from the CDC. Only 2 centers have been continuously funded by the CDC in this capacity since '87, us and Johns Hopkins. Other milestones in the center's existence, I believe, well, let me point out the disclaimer. This is a somewhat personal view of center history, and I think reflects my biases, and other people, might put emphasis on other areas like child maltreatment, for example. So it's a somewhat idiosyncratic view of it, but I think a milestone study to come out of our center was Carroll's case control study of house fires in '92, one of the first injury case control studies, a very well conducted and rigorous study, and analyzed on a mainframe computer. And Carol was good enough to leave me her printouts, right, all nicely bound together and tabbed out with important findings highlighted, a model of how to conduct analysis, which I gleefully will display to epidemiology students in the fall, and they will say, yeah, Why isn't it in a PDF? And we will then talk about analysis that you did on cards, etc., etc. It's one of those history lessons that everyone has to get. In '94, we were classified as a Big C Centre by UNC, which gave us some degree of additional fiscal responsibility, and also the ability to route our own proposals through officer-sponsored research. I remember the day we put on the Vincent video conference in 1997. In those days, you did video conferences with big searchlights, and beaming them in. No, not quite that bad, but it truly was amazing, the concept of a long-distance video conference with multiple sites joining in. We just take webinars for granted now, but in '97, this was really like a pioneering concept. Attracted, and all of us were just astounded by the hundreds of people who registered for this event. We had no idea. We think it'd be 20 or 30, not 200 or 300. A very well organized, continuing on that, very well organized program of violence prevention training, PI'd by Carol in 2003 and continuing for many years. This is personal, but in 2004 we started participating with the Injury and Violence Prevention branch in the State Health Department on the violent death reporting system, which is surveillance of suicide and homicide. Just an example of successful collaboration between IPNC and Injury and Violence Prevention branch. This is completely personal, but concussion wouldn't be where it is today as a hot-button topic if we, UNC and the IPRC included, hadn't published these studies in '05 and '07 on neurodementia and depression, linking adverse mental health outcomes and dementing illness to concussion. Of course, Kevin Guskowitz, my close friend and colleague, was the key driver there. 2007, a massive statewide intervention project. How often do you get to do that? You know, around child maltreatment, period of purple crime, still being analysed by Megan to this day. And then Paul's Centre, I think this is a landmark, Paul's grant that was funded in 2010 on youth violence prevention, which I think, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the only rural youth violence prevention research centre in the United States. And the complexities of working in a remote site in Robeson County with its many overlapping layers of cultural diversity and rich history, this is a significant undertaking indeed. So congratulations to Paul. So that's the history of the centre. My own history is much more minor. I came as a graduate student in '94. I worked in the IPRC. I sat at a desk at the other end of the office was a guy called Kant Bangawala. I saw him 3 or 4 times over this 4-year period. He's a very globe-trotting ambassador of our centre. And they gave me a computer that I had to go to recycling very quickly because it was not functional. This must be wrong. Maybe this is 1999 instead of 99. I became a research professor, but I still was really based within the centre, and most of my activities, my day-to-day office activities, were within the centre. In 2002, I moved up to the Department of Epidemiology and sort of moved through the tenure track ranks at that point, but retained an affiliation with the centre as on its core faculty group. So that's a very rushed overview, but I thought for those of you who weren't familiar with the IPRC, it might be helpful to get kind of a sense of where the centre's at. The centre of the budget of the centre is around about 3 to 5 million in any given year, with our core grant from the CDC accounting for the most recent fiscal year, 836,000 or thereabouts. And a very, this campus, you'll hear me say this about 30 times, this campus is blessed with a lot of great faculty who do wonderful research in this area. And the centre tries to stay in touch with as many of them as it can, if not all of them, and facilitate their mission and see what it can do to help them. So that's the orientation to the centre. I thought I would back up several thousand feet and kind of give a quick orientation to the field for those of you who aren't aware of it. Or perhaps have had minimal exposure to the concept of injury prevention. So injury prevention consists of wrapping everyone in bubble wrap, making them sit on their couch 24/7. Well, we could do that and we would get rid of the injury problem, except for except for very extreme circumstances. But it would be a boring life, correct? So, we recognize that we need to balance our push towards safety against the needs of individuals to throw themselves out of aeroplanes, climb mountains. Jared isn't here. And do other various life-threatening things. And of course, we don't want those things to go away. We just want people to understand the risks and to maybe have safety equipment and means of getting help when they need it. So I'm going to quickly overview a little bit about the field, the diversity of the field, and comment quickly on the funding situation, which is near and dear to my heart. An accident is something that takes place without foresight or expectation. It's an event that happens by chance. So we don't see injuries as accidents. We see injuries as preventable entities, things that occur following predictable patterns. And obviously there's a multifactorial element to the causation of injuries. So there is certainly some degree of randomness in the occurrence of injury, but when we look at populations of people, the occurrence of injury follows very predictable patterns. There's going to be more homicide in minority communities, for example. Right? So we define an injury as damage to the body, typically acute and traumatic, due to an uncontrolled transfer of energy. Right? And the key here, there's going to be a short quiz, by the way, in 15 minutes. The key here is an uncontrolled transfer of energy. So a car crash, a child falling downstairs is an example of uncontrolled transfer of kinetic energy. But the energy can take many forms. It could be thermal, so that would be heat stroke, chemical, as in poisoning, ionizing radiation, which is unusual, electrical, electrocution, which is transfer of uncontrolled energy from an electrical source, or even the sudden absence of an essential agent, which is drowning, typically. So that is what we consider the scope of the field, and it is very, very broad indeed. Among people aged 1 to 44 years, injury accounts, so injury, this includes both unintentional injuries and intentional injuries, account for 51% of deaths. And these people here represent various numbers of deaths per annum from these different causes, these different sources. So among all the people we care about, other people in this room, right, it's a major source of death. Of course, when I show this slide, I have to acknowledge that most death does not occur in this age grouping, right? Most people who die are over the age of 45. Depressingly close in my case. But close in a retrospective direction. Nevertheless, it's an impressive number. So the number of injury deaths in North Carolina, which was approximately 6,000 in 2010, is equivalent to a 747 crashing 14 times and everyone dying. Every year. So imagine if we lost 14 747s every year in the state of North Carolina. In every. So this is the magnitude of the problem. So it is a very, very large number. And with a large problem like this, there is not going to be a magic bullet. Right? It takes a concerted effort by a lot of people in a lot of different areas to begin to take that very large number and drag it downwards towards zero. Furthermore, mortality is just the tip of the so-called injury iceberg. And I include this slide purely to demonstrate that I, far and away, within the field of injury control, have the coolest injury iceberg slide. So the job interview's over now? No, okay. Injury hospitalizations in our state, many, many more than there are deaths, nearly 160,000. Emergency department visits, nearly 900,000. Now we're kind of getting to the limits of the things that we can count easily, right? We just know that a lot of people are treated by non-physicians and go to private physician offices, but enumerating these in a reliable manner, we have to rely on sampling techniques. because we can't complete a census anymore. So it's a large problem, but it has many, many component pieces. And the CDC has identified these particular foci that by no means are we constrained to work in these areas, but if we're not actively pursuing these injuries in a center that is a quarter of a century old, then that would be a profound mistake. So the CDC current focus areas are motor vehicle related injuries, violence against children and youth, which includes both youth violence, Paul Center, and child maltreatment, prescription drug overdose, which is a rapidly escalating problem nationwide, and traumatic brain injury, including mild traumatic brain injury or concussion. And historically, falls in older adults has made the CDC focus list, and I'm sure it will rotate back into the mix, so we are certainly not walking away from work in that area. It's an area we need to continue. So that's, you know, like I said, we're not constrained to these areas, but if we're not doing something in all of these areas, then we're not well positioned. Fortunately, we are doing something in all of these areas and many other areas combined. So this is, you know, the center can, the research interests of the faculty and collaborators of the center can be presented in many different ways. But this is the most convenient representation of our research portfolio that I have found. We have enormous strengths in occupational injury and violence, which is not a priority within the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control, but is a priority for the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. Okay, so you understand this doesn't appear on the list I showed you previously because of federal division of resources. Sports-related injury and TBI is an area where I think Dr. Blackburn would agree we have significant strengths on this campus, perhaps more so than anywhere else in the United States. Motor vehicle-related injuries, the center has done a lot of work in this field, but we're also blessed to have the Highway Safety Research Center and all of its wonderful staff and the potential for cross-pollination within in this area. And there is some of that underway. Prescription drug overdose, thanks to Mariana Gerson. We have 3 funded research activities in this area, and I think like 6 under review at this point. So we are, in terms of research, addressing this problem and how to solve it, we really are ahead of anyone else, well, almost everyone else in the country. And so that is the unintentional realm. In the intentional areas, violence against children, youth violence, partner violence, and falls prevention in older adults. I think that one was supposed to be unintentional. Traditional areas of strength where we have an enormous base of expertise and resources to call on, and a lot of active research. However, in injury control, we always deliver this message to any audience, which is, we're broke. No, please could you send more money? It is that we are not broke. We have some, but relative to the impact of our problem, we are under-resourced. So if you really want us to take the 6,000 deaths and this 180,000 hospitalizations and drag it on downwards towards 0, we should, not to say that these resources should go, but what we should receive, these bars should be more equitable. So in this slide, we're looking at healthcare expenditures in cancer and heart disease and injury. So this is the cost of providing medical care, short and long term, in those domains, and the amount of NIH research that's poured into those areas in millions of dollars. And as you can see, we're down here relative to heart, lung, and blood, and NCI. And let me say that these NIH figures are pan-institute, so they don't just pertain to those specific institutes. Obviously, we lobby all the time for more funds, but realistically, we also look for entertaining ways to demonstrate that injuries can give you heart disease. And it's intriguing that the early work in breast cancer really did look at injury to the breast as a potential genesis of cancer. So there's more linkages between these areas than you might think. And I'm all for raising this bar up, but I'm also interested in how I can partner with chronic disease researchers so that I can look at innovative ways to tap into their bars. I mean their funding levels, sorry, not the, just try. Well, on the practitioner side, and this is a report that literally came out this month, it doesn't look any rosier. So, you know, the funds that have been made available to people like Alan Del Pena and state health departments have consistently, I don't know why Robert Johnson laid this out from right to left, but they did. They've starting from 2006 and going to the left, they've consistently dropped. And, you know, we are lucky not just to have a full-time injury and violence prevention director in our state health department. We're also fortunate to have a great staff and a very talented director. But we are in the minority. Most states, well, no, we're in the majority, but still nearly half the states do not. And there used to be more, like 7 years ago. And so the funds that are channeled by the CDC are only 5% of the budget. So both on the research side and on the practice side, you know, there are insufficient resources devoted to this problem relative to its magnitude. So now that I've persuaded you all to go and become chronic disease researchers instead of injury researchers, let me turn it around and tell you why I think we do such important work and how we can keep doing that important work and grow it in the years ahead. But before I do that, I'm going to ask if there's any questions, because this is kind of like a natural break point for in the thematic flow of my material and my level of dehydration. So, are there any questions about the quick overview that I just ran through? Well, good. So now we'll go to the quiz. So what I want to present now very quickly to you is sort of my interpretation of what I would like the IPRC to look like. What should these centers look like at academic institutions? And I want to stress these concepts: transformative, high impact, and sustained impact. And I think at UNC we have, with a quarter century of history, we have no trouble demonstrating our sustained impact. But of course, you know, by sustained, I also mean the sustainability of our center, and that means diversification of our funding base into new realms, new areas that haven't been addressed previously, new innovations, and also new funding buckets, such as private industry or foundations, that we haven't called on much previously. Transformative, high-impact centers, these should be centers that revolutionize the field and put it at the forefront and make it that the center is a recognized national leader. This is, there are many things around this country that are injury research centers at this point in time. On the left, this is a list of institutions that have received core grant funding from the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control, the NCIPC. These ones on the left are currently funded, and we top the list. And so the two longest funded ones are at the top of the list. And these are ones that have previously been funded but are currently now either in between funding, or in the case of a couple of them, perhaps unlikely to regain it as it becomes more and more competitive to get this center grant. This is the state of the field, if you will, or the state of the play. And some of them are in our area, some of them are far distant from us. We work closely with people at some of them. Others of them we have very little interaction with. My vision for the center, as I said, is that it should be transformative. So we need to do the research that we don't just need to do research on injury prevention. We need to do the research on injury prevention. We need to make sure that the studies, at least some of our studies, are studies that transform and revolutionize the field. we also need to be a center with high impact. That means nationally recognized for our leadership. This could be in the research area, but it could also be in terms of our interactions with the practitioner community, and hopefully it would be both. We need to be recognized as a center that has high impact, not just nationally, but hopefully globally, but certainly nationally. And as I said, we need to have sustained impact. It means high quality programs. So it's not enough to be known for programs, we need to be known for high quality programs that really have a lasting impact on people in the field. So I'm going to say a little bit more about some of these topics in more detail, and I just threw out some lofty goals, which of course we hope to achieve by 5 o'clock this afternoon. Know that it takes a while to get there, but you know, in my life I've always had a plan. I've never really, none of them ever really came off exactly as I planned them, but I do know that not having a plan is a mistake. So we need a plan, a strategic plan for our center. Research that enhances the potential for prevention. That's transformative research in our field. It's research that advances the methodology, or it's research that helps people prevent injuries, right? So with 6,000 deaths accruing in our state annually, we shouldn't be sitting around looking at minuscule problems that have very little, that only kill 1 or 2 people a year, or or have very low impact. We need to address major problems, or as John Castile, one of the founders of the Framingham study, once said, you got to get with the epidemic if you want to have an impact. So we need to get with the epidemic. So on our doorstep, we have a new epidemic arising in the United States, and it is poisonings from prescription medicine. Some of these poisonings are fully unintentional and represent ill-informed but responsibly intentioned people who just took too many opioid medications, or people whose prescriptions were not rationally written up. But they also represent some illicit drug use of opiate medication. So that is an area that has arisen that we are working to address. But the thing with we need to continue to work hard in this area, because having a slight lead on the competition, if you will, doesn't last very long in this day and age, in this climate. So in order to make sure that our position continues to be reinforced, we need to continue to work in it. So it's no good getting off to an early start if you can't go for the whole 400 meters in a 400-meter race. Likewise, innovative approaches to problems. And I feel that our campus, in partnership with Exercise and Sports Science, has done a lot of innovative things in the field of concussion. Back 15 years ago, concussion people didn't interact with injury control people. They didn't do public health type research. And when we said, well, it's one thing to deploy a concussion intervention, but you have to evaluate it, no one really understood what we were saying. So we were lucky, I think, to have someone like Kevin Guskowitz, who was willing to drink from the vat of Kool-Aid and get the idea that building an evidence base and evaluating interventions, clinical interventions or community-based interventions, was really, really important. And so that is an area where we had a leading start a decade and a half ago, and we've kept pushing in that area, even as it's taken us into some amazing areas that we never thought we would go, including neuroradiology and even genomic testing of athletes. So, as I said, once you get off to a head start, you can't coast to the finish line, because, as you all well know, there's no finish line, right? It's an ongoing race. But continuing to take advantage of new and innovative approaches is really, really important. And this is a theme that I think our center needs to take advantage of. So increasingly, I'm interested in things where we can tie injuries, like head injuries, to consequences in later life. In this case, we tied concussion to neurodementia and depression, but we still don't really understand the mechanism, how that works. Now, in collaboration with Dr. Callahan, Dr. Golightly, Dr. Nelson, were looking to tie knee injuries to osteoarthritis. And there are things about people who have had their knees scoped out that clinically we can pull out and look at, a little bit of synovial fluid, maybe some genotyping, that would tell us, okay, this knee injury is on the fast track to osteoarthritis and needs an early clinical intervention to stop them from, becoming an OA cripple in their mid-30s. So increasingly, I would like our center to partner with the School of Medicine and increasing to do biologically and clinically focused research where we don't just look at injury as an endpoint, but we look at injury as the initiator, or as we say in epidemiology, as the exposure. So, of course I'm trying to double dip from the NIH pool, but you saw how those bars are lined up. The chronic disease people have the cash, so naturally. Those research areas are really promising, really important, and thinking creatively about our research agenda so that we can tap into new sources of funds is part of our strategic direction. Policy and intervention. This is really, really a critical area for our center. So we can't, we need this basic science research, but we also need to understand how to intervene and prevent, and how to test interventions, and because in our state, thanks to Alan's group, there's a well-organized armies of people who are eager to do prevention work. With those people, we need to do three things. One, encourage them and support them because their heart is in the right place. Two, we need to murmur politely about the evidence base because we want people to do evidence-based interventions. And three, the evidence base is pretty porous in many places. We need to build the evidence base. So examples of that, both of them from Mariana's area, would be the randomized trial that we have running in Carolina's Medical Center, testing new clinical procedures for screening out people who are repeatedly seeking opiates and addressing them in other ways. Maybe they're legitimately looking for those medications and they need a new approach to pain management, or maybe they're doctor shopping within the same healthcare system. And also related to that, evaluation of policies. This is a huge area where our center, which has an enormous wealth of methodological expertise with brilliant people like Mike Bowling and Kant Mangdawala, where we can compare laws and policies that were present in certain states and certain time periods and not present in other states and other time periods, so that we can say what policies work. In this case, what policies with regard to prescription medicines work to limit people's access to those medications. And then I think, unfortunately we won't get to do another one of these within the confines of the center grant, but Paula and Vanji's work translating, in this case, Safe Dates, a program designed to prevent dating violence, translating that into a new setting. In this case, the Latino community, taking up proven interventions and transporting them, porting them into new settings. This is a really fundamental area where, if we've got something that works, let's figure out how to make it work in new communities and new places. So we do need to advocate for our field at every opportunity we can. That's like just talking to the media. It's talking to your next door neighbor. And I'm not saying you should get up in the morning and educate them, but it is important for a center like this to be engaged with the general public and seizing every opportunity to raise awareness that injury is one, a major issue, two, largely preventable. And I'm indebted to Alan's group for coming up with the injury elevator speech, which is like 2 weeks old now. But it is the 15-second soundbite that you give to your congressman when you bump into them in the elevator. And I think we might get Senator Hagan to come to campus in the near future. So if we say the elevator speech 50 times. And, for injury professionals, networking opportunities, professional development opportunities, things that we can do by partnering with Alan's group, for example, to facilitate translation of research and upskilling of the workforce. Those are really critical areas for us. And so we have an injury research workforce. So this is half of our centre, is our injury research core. And this is our faculty and other non-faculty EPA people who are very dedicated, work very hard, tend to get very focused on the problem at hand and don't always see the connection, say, between knee injury and sexual violence, even though there are important connections. But also, like all academicians, we get into our own little universe and we sometimes struggle to connect with practice settings. But many of our PIs and faculties would welcome the chance to engage with practitioners. Then we have an injury prevention workforce. These are people like injury prevention coordinators in trauma centers or safe kids who, very much like our research community, they're very dedicated, they work very hard, they tend to focus on the problem at hand. They don't always appreciate, even the practice community, linkages between sexual violence and concussion, and they would welcome professional development opportunities. I think we have a match here between these two groups. And so thanks to Alan and Liz and Mariana, we have an academy, the Injury Free NC Academy, which is an opportunity to recruit dedicated injury prevention professionals, put them in contact with our educated resource faculty PIs. And what the beautiful thing about this model is it's not just like a one-day workshop, then to stay in touch with them. And the nice thing about this is it builds on the PREVENT model, so teams of people, our community people are in teams, and we work with them as a team, because it's much more reinforcing to work with others. Working on your own can be really well. This is not research, this is workforce development, but this is connecting the researchers to the workforce and connecting the workforce to the researchers. And this is an important part of the non-research part of the IPRC core. Well, I think I'm about out of time, and these are the sorts of questions that people always ask at these sorts of sessions. Bob, should I quickly, Sam had to step out, or Sam was so bored he had to leave. But I can quickly skip through. I want to make sure I leave plenty of time for questions and answers. I can probably skip through these in 5 minutes. Our top 3 assets in the IPRC, it's people, but you know, that's the same. Your people are your assets. And it's not just people, but the structures that allow people to work together and to manage the inevitable transitions that occur with staff turnover. Our collaborators in the state and in the community, I believe, are a really critical asset for us. We are so lucky, our centre, to have a strong injury and violence prevention and a strong health department in general at this point in time. And in previous cycles of our history, we have not been so lucky. And then our other asset is this beautiful campus with its incredibly skilled researcher base. And I've just listed out, and of course, you, just like in the Department of Defense, you need to be able to read acronyms. But you know, within the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research, there are at least 5 other centers: Health Promotion, Disease Prevention, Highway Safety, the Institute on Aging, Child Development, the Institute for the Environment, and the Computing Institute, where we have immediate linkages, where we could be, you know, we should be on the look for new funding opportunities, because there's immediate areas of overlap in terms of in detecting injury surveillance patterns and surveillance data, global warming and heat-related conditions, developmental disabilities and child abuse, falls in older adults, driving and kids like my blasted 16-year-old who did $4,000 worth of damage to my car when he rear-ended the one in front of it. And health promotion. You know, a few weeks ago we were treated to a guest from California who talked about community gardening as a a way of intervening on violence in communities. We have a center which the director is all about community gardening as a way of healthy eating and obesity reduction. So we have natural win-win areas that we can work on here with. And I'm not even getting into the School of Medicine or departments. This is a rich campus in terms of its resources. Top 3 challenges. We need to accelerate the pace by which faculty connect to our center. And I think that's going to involve increasingly people who identify with IPRC as an intellectual home. And so I think that's going to look very much like a door-knocking campaign where we go one-on-one with promising people like the IOA or Frank Porter Graham or researchers in as health behavior as of July 1. And work with them on saying, you know, here's a funding opportunity that we think would be great for your line of research. You know, we do. But as we do that, we also need to be careful because all of those people already have intellectual homes with other centers and with departments. So it's not just visiting with faculty, it's also visiting with department chairs and making sure that they're cool. They want the best thing for their faculty. So if we can get their faculty member a grant that they wouldn't otherwise get, they're receptive to it. If it's a grant they were going to get anyway and we poached it, they're not so happy. So, you know, that's just a question of having a conversation, making sure that everyone's comfortable and on board with that campaign. Seeding junior faculty positions, that's really important for us and something that we have to do, and we have to, you know, not just nurture people, but stick by those people through good times and sometimes lean times. So it's the investment, not just in mentoring, but also financial investment in salary. So these are tough times in terms of departments being unwilling to launch tenure track searches, in terms of deans being very fiscally conservative, and so being able to underwrite and create financial packages without our own center getting leveraged out too far is going to be a delicate balancing act in the 12 to 24 month cycle ahead of us. President Ross, I think, gave us the word here. We're not in a recession. We're in a restructuring. Okay? Our economy is fundamentally different from the way it was 36 months ago, 5 years ago. And so it's not like things are going to pop up. Things will pop up, but when they pop up, the landscape will be different. And then, you know, related to that is just increasing competition academically for fewer and fewer dollars. And to that end, I think some of these pan or cross-center collaborations I would hope would be supported by the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research, which consists of Jennifer writing me a check. Thanks. Yeah. I like those ones that have round, that roll off your typewriter. Lots of zeros on the end. Our top 3 priorities. Center grant renewal, obviously. We need to ensure that we send them a center grant that's absolutely perfect and stellar in every respect. And we have a 15-month timeline on that. So we are planning and working towards it. I think I'm mindful of the fact that we're in the middle of a recruitment. So I think irrespective of who the next director is, the foundation that's been laid here is something that, you know, they would appreciate inheriting. We do need to recruit and build up the number of R01 level projects that we have in the center. And as I say, I think that involves working with faculty and making them aware of opportunities and helping them polish their awards so that, you know, we move them from just below the pay line to just into the pay line. And then once we've done that, making sure that they have the resources and support they need so they can execute on those projects. And, you know, once they're funded projects, we don't just walk away. We need to stand by faculty and support them as well. And, you know, making connections with all of the other opportunities on campus, all of the other units that I mentioned, and those would be my top 3 priorities for the 12 months. There's a 4th priority, which is for me to ride my bicycle, and because that keeps me sane. and also to ensure that I reserve time for my own academic career, because a beautiful center with a center like this needs a director who's a national leader, and I'm very conscious of the fact that, and I try to reserve time out of my day, and all of our staff are extremely respectful of those occasions when I have to close the door. But if I don't reserve time for my own academic career, then I'm not doing the right thing by the center. So I'm very respectful of that, and I appreciate all the people who facilitate that. It is a special occasion. We don't get to appoint a new director for the center very often. Well, once every quarter century, historically, on average, once every 12.5 years, I guess. I think the pace of this will probably accelerate in the future, because I think it's likely that 2 terms as a director of any research center or any institution are sufficient for anyone. But I do want to acknowledge the pioneering work that was done by our previous directors, by Pat, who passed in 2003, and by Carol, who took the IPRC from a couple of desks in the corner to the multi-million-dollar operation, a very successful operation it has become. So I really want to acknowledge the past in addition to looking to the future. That's very, very important. So I hope I've covered some of the questions. This is just so you can see Robert's office. Right here. But I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have.
I am not Sam Odom. He did duck out. He wasn't bored. He ducked out because he had another commitment. I'm Bob Lohman. I represent the Vice Chancellor for Research on the Search Committee. And we do have some time for questions, and I'm sure Steve will answer any questions that people have. So fire away. Always takes a few seconds for the first question. There you go.
Nice talk, Steve, and nice for me to see the history of the center. You talked about diversification of funding. What are the types of, which we all are having to look at and think about because of the government, what are the types of things that, just this is my ignorance of foundations, where would you look in injury for those beyond federal government type funding?
Well, Robert Wood Johnson is really interested in this area, and we already have some Robert Wood Johnson funding. So, I mean, it's small, it's like $150,000, but we're excited to have something from them. And so they are a foundation that really, and they've funded other work in the area of street violence and gang violence in other centers in Baltimore. So I think, long term, doing things that deal with interventions around violence is very attractive to Robert Wood Johnson. Johnson & Johnson is someone who's invested strongly in the sports medicine community and in a significant way. So I think that we have an opportunity there to talk to them about pediatric injury prevention and examination of interventions addressing not just recreational injuries but other injuries in children. They're the Band-Aid people, so it's kind of a natural brand resonance to some extent. Many years ago there was a Home Safety Foundation, but that's not exactly the right name, but it was called the Lowe's Home Safety Foundation, then became the Home Safety. And they invested in the center to do work around residential injury. So we've been, I would say, probably more successful than some other centers in terms of harnessing access to foundation resources. There's, I don't want to say too much, but there's KP Reynolds in the Triangle area, actively talking to them at the moment. The Borough's Welcome Fund, I think, is a very untapped resource for us. Bob suggested that we should have an industry council, and I've done work with Sporting Good Manufacturers Association in the past, and manufacturers. It works well. A lot of some of the work we've done collaboratively with exercise and sports science is sort of funded through a sports agency called NOXI that certifies athletic equipment. Those industry sources, you have to be careful about the way these things are set up and the endpoints and the deliverables, and make sure there's no conditionality to the funding. But they can be successful in the past. But you know, we need to, as I say, ensure that everything we do is of the same high academic standard, irrespective of how it's funded.
Steve, I'll just mention I appreciate the multiple comments of the relationship of this center with the state health department and the injury community of North Carolina. I think North Carolina has enjoyed a unique relationship because of the health department system and the university here. And I think CDC looks at the injury research centers as to strengthen the relationship with the state health departments even more. And I just, you know, we're glad to see the partnership in the vision that we've seen here and the continuity, because Carol certainly established a strong relationship with the practice community in this state and the region, and the vision is good to continue.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is the great foundation that Carol laid. So I'll take all the credit.
Steve, I'm curious on your take as to how to do something, and that is, you mentioned tapping into resources that aren't typically where we would draw funding from, using the example of cancer and heart disease. How do we do that? How do we walk the fine line of sounding sincere in our tie-in and not sounding like a poacher to achieve that funding?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to make the case of innovation, significance, and biology. So what will carry the day is a number of things. But you need one of those nice cartoons that people put in their innovation section that illustrates the biological rationale for what you're proposing. And I don't think you need to have all of those steps squared away as facts, but you need to be able to tell a biologically plausible story. So, you know, for an example of that, Sandy Schultz at UNC Greensboro, who's done a lot of work around measurement of knee laxity and ACL, has become just so fascinated by genetics now that she can't stay away from it. And I tease Sandy that this is part of her quest to find the least preventable opportunity for intervening on ACLs. But you know, it's very fundable from a genetic epidemiology perspective, because in genetic epidemiology you see a lot of proposals where I'm going to sequence a genome and look for some association with retinoblastoma. What's the biological rationale? That's what makes or breaks those proposals. So we've got nice biological rationale for ACL with collagen receptors that have been identified by the South Africans. So the fact that we can tell a story of biological plausibility or a good biological cartoon, I think is an important asset. You can't just say I'm hunting. You need to be able to lay out a rational reason. And so we look for those opportunities and the things that will raise us up above a host of other proposals in that area, in the case of genetics, for example. Of course, you need other ingredients as well. You know, a wonderful entry-level statistical geneticist in Michael Wu, a great genetic epidemiologist in Noria Francesca, and you know, sports medicine people who are skilled at their human body measurements, and an epidemiologist who just knows a little bit about each area and is foolish enough to think that he can help get this funded. Did I dodge your question sufficiently adroitly to make it seem like that was an answer?
Any other questions?
I have a question. Thanks, Steve. One of the things that that Larry Cohen spoke about on May 9th was the need to, he spoke at a statewide injury conference that happened. And he spoke about the need to better integrate sort of the unintentional injury world and the intentional injury world. And you've talked a lot about sort of engaging injury with heart disease and cancer and arthritis. What are your thoughts about, I mean, and you sort of made the mention of knee injury and sexual assault, but in terms of structurally, do you have any thoughts about how to better connect what really become, unfortunately, more siloed than they should be?
Yeah, so I don't think silos are bad. I just think silos are bad if there's no crosswalk between them. Okay, so I don't have a problem with sexual violence being siloed, but at the end of the day, we need to understand that women don't roll up and say, hello, I'm being battered, right? No one discloses sexual violence like that, right? But a woman who comes in and has severe knee injuries, right? How did you get? I fell down the stairs, right? We need to understand the connection between why she fell down the stairs and her knee injuries. And that's what we don't always do a very good job on. So just for one example, there's a patient who presented in the ED one day here, and her jaw had been broken and wired, but then she wired together to restore it, but then the wires hadn't been removed correctly, and she wanted the wires taken out, but it was too late to take them out. And the physicians got very angry with her because she hadn't come back for her scheduled visit. Right? And then she said, well, my time here is over, and she left because she had to be home by a certain time. There was a missed opportunity because her jaw got broken by her husband. So we need to understand how these unite in a single case, in an individual person. Once we tell those stories, people will begin to connect the dots.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'd like to thank the School of Journalism and Mass Communications for the use of the Freedom Forum this afternoon, and thank Renzi for videotaping this presentation so those who could not be here today would be able to view it online. And thank you all for coming. Thank you, Steve.